Welcome to the digital world we live in, a world that is transforming and evolving faster than ever before every day. A world in which our future is inextricably linked to digital innovation. The digital transformation and the growing demand for data is changing how we live, work, and think. But to realize this digital future, we need a solid foundation: our digital infrastructure. This infrastructure, the foundation of our digital economy and society, is facing unprecedented challenges. The demand for technical staff is growing faster than ever. Our energy needs are increasing rapidly, and with them the need for sustainable solutions. Data centers are crucial for our digital economy. At the same time, we are facing the challenges of power supply and the energy transition. The digital transformation and the energy transition need to find a way to synergize. Data centers have the opportunity to be at the forefront of this transition and accelerate digital and sustainable solutions. And now our journey begins. The Kickstart conference is the place where these critical issues are addressed, where leaders, thinkers, and innovators come together to find solutions, network, and collaborate on our future. So let's get started. Let's join forces, share our ideas, and build a sustainable digital future together. Welcome to the Kickstart conference. And here is your host, initiator of Kickstart Europe, Stein Grove.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome at Kickstart 2024, the premier digital infrastructure conference in Europe. And we are very happy that you're all here. Last night, we have over 1,000 people already in for the starting drinks, which was amazing and really nice that you're all here. Why we started Kickstart? We wanted to have a place where we could discuss basically what is happening in the world. Our economy is becoming more digital. It's growing to a new economy, which is open, transparent, secure, sustainable, but overall digital. And digital means that you need digital infrastructure to accommodate the growth. All the key ambitions that we have as Europe, as the world, for AI, quantum computing, is residing in data centers, in digital infrastructure. We wanted to be a place where investors who are looking for the big new opportunity could meet, where operation executives could see innovations, and where you can do a very good networking and expand your network. That is why we started Kickstart at the start of the year in an environment where people can meet in a very pleasant way with lots of people who give insights available. Today we have a fully packed program. We have the morning program with a couple of panels, presentations. We have the afternoon program with tracks on sustainability, on operational challenges, on investments, on regional updates. A fully packed program which you can also follow in the app and all the information that's also in the Outlook report. We hope you really enjoy today here in Amsterdam. In terms of a big thank you still is for our platinum sponsors, our founding partners who are here from the beginning, but also our team who made this possible. Every year it's growing bigger and bigger, so we have over 1,750 registered attendees, which is amazing. So our team makes it possible, and especially Zoe Derksen, who is our event manager. We would like to thank you very much. So, thank you. So, enough from me, let's start. And this morning program, we have a moderator who is a well-known Dutch journalist, presenter. He's known, his previous occupation were correspondent for the national news in New York and Washington. And he is presenting the political program Buitenhof and College Tour. So I would like to give a warm welcome for Mr. Twan Huis.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome to Amsterdam, everybody who came in today. And as Stijn said, there is a really interesting program and panels. There are 3 panels that we'll start with soon. I just wanted to tell you, as a journalist, and especially a journalist in television, for over 30 years, I have been a correspondent, as Stijn said, in New York and Washington. And we started out using satellites to get our stories from New York and Washington to the Netherlands for our audience here, or in war zones where I worked in the former Yugoslavia during the Bosnian War. It was all very complicated, big cases of equipment. And I realized when I was preparing for this morning, because of the data center, everything that has changed the last 20 to 25 years, our work is so easy right now. I mean, we can take our phones and report basically from everywhere where there's a signal and a cable and a data center. So my work has really speeded up because of your work, which is interesting. I don't know where it leads to. We'll talk about that, about AI probably as well. But before we do that, there is a keynote speaker, a really interesting one. He's a technology, marketing, and research professional with over 20 years of experience delivering content. He has written thousands of blog posts, news articles, and research papers on the tech industry for marketeers, analyst firms, and publications over the course of his career. Please give a warm welcome to Kevin Restivo, Director of Data Center Research.
Thanks, Twan, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. As Twan said, I'm Kevin Restivo, and I lead CBRE's EMEA Data Center Research from London. For the next 10 minutes, what I'd like to do is give you a market outlook on the year. We're well into 2024, but I'd like to talk about what our expectations are for the year and give you a bit of a longer-term outlook as well, too. So let me start by saying we are in a fantastic industry right now when you compare data center sector to other real estate asset classes. We're, in fact, considerably better in many ways, and you'll see that growth across the course of my presentation. And there are really 4 market dynamics that maybe stories, trends, call them what you will, that really represent the state of the industry today. And I think first and foremost, we're best known for our data and our insights that spawn from that. And so the take-up growth that I'll highlight and availability, those are set. Take-up growth and supply growth are in fact in reverse this year, but not a sign of market weakness. In fact, the market, as I said before, is stronger than ever. That said, availability is set to decline. It's harder than ever to bring data centers into the world, given the strong demand we see. And that supply-demand imbalance, and yes, there is very much an imbalance, more companies, organizations wanting capacity than the industry can supply in any given year. And so there's some natural consequences that come from that, of course. Strong pricing growth. So we're seeing rental rates rising dramatically. And that's a function of build costs. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's also a sign rental rates are on the rise because of that supply and demand imbalance as well, too. And finally, facility sizes, requirements because of the voracious appetite for capacity that organizations that you're well familiar with have for capacity, for their need for space, in other words. Facility sizes are on the rise. So data centers only become bigger, in short. And then no presentation would be complete without a discussion on AI. So I'll touch on that briefly at the end as well, too. So let's start with the sort of blocking and tackling, as I like to say, supply, demand, and availability. What are the state of affairs in the industry today? Well, as you can see, the markets are expected to fare quite well across the top 5 markets of Europe. So Frankfurt, Amsterdam, London, Paris, Dublin. Those are the top 5 markets as far as total capacity goes for the across Europe. We're looking at about 3.6 gigawatts by the end of the year. So these are all projected figures, by the way. And I should note before I go any further that we're talking only about co-location data center markets. So not hyperscaler self-builds or enterprise data centers, exclusively carrier-neutral third-party co-location data centers. So again, that sum of total of capacity delivered is only growing, and it's but not as much as last year, as I said. So we're expecting 354 megawatts of new supply, and then strong take-up. So for the second year in a row, we're expecting take-up to exceed supply, as I mentioned, and that's across the top 5 markets. And so, as you can imagine, there are some knock-on effects that will happen. So vacancy for the first time ever across the top 5 markets will dip below 10%. So we're getting into uncharted waters. And unlike offices or other adjacent asset classes, as far as commercial real estate, this is particularly low for data centers, begging the question of where to source capacity. And availability figures demonstrate that as well, too. So how does that split out? So where is all this great demand that I'm talking about? And it's virtually, I mean, with the exception of, well, I should say across every market, we see that strong demand, but mostly we see it in Frankfurt and London. So Frankfurt and London are in a league of their own. Those 2 markets are where we expect the greatest amount of take-up this year, very simply put, if you look at the pie chart on the left. And, but very strong demand also in other of the top 5 markets and across Europe as well, too. If the total capacity, London last year, if you look at the table on the right, London is now over 1 gigawatt, and only the largest European market, the only one to have 1 gigawatt of live capacity. Frankfurt is getting close to that point, in fact, and will surpass, or will be at the 2nd gigawatt market. In fact, that's where we're seeing the most new supply delivered this year, if you look at the second row of that table. Amsterdam and Paris, virtually the same size. Now Paris has really sort of ascended, if you will, or has grown as a market, largely because of the development in the south. Dublin, despite the moratorium there on, de facto moratorium I should call it, on new power applications on the part of data center providers, still very much a market in growth mode. And as you can see on the bottom 2 rows of that table, rates are very much on the rise, vacancy descending to various depths. So to what depths are they plunging? Well, it depends on the market you're talking about, but the markets where there's greatest data center development, where the greatest data center footprint, you're seeing virtually no capacity. So if you look at, for example, well, we're right here in Amsterdam, Schiphol, 5% in, relative to the headline rate. There's the submarkets where the biggest data center footprints are considerably smaller. In Frankfurt and Paris, virtually no capacity in the south of Paris or in Hanauer-Landstrasse. And these are just examples. So again, capacity is, as I like to say, a precious commodity. And this is largely, those submarkets where vacancy is lowest, is largely a reflection of where hyperscalers have their availability zones. So they're looking to add, for example, 5 to 10 megawatts per year. And as that wholesale capacity is being delivered with pre-lets in place. And so as a consequence, we see no available capacity in those submarkets, and supply being delivered is already accounted for the most part. But Europe is more than the top 5 markets, of course, and I'm proud to say that CBRE has expanded its geographic coverage over the last 2.5 years. So me and the team now cover 15 European markets, and as a result, you see the sizing of those various markets, or what we expect those markets to grow to by the end of the year, if you look at the map on the right, and a whole series of secondary markets that are growing. Well, they'll be over 100 megawatts by the end of the year. 2 years ago, we would have seen only 2 markets of that size. So a lot of supply being delivered across Europe, not just in the top 5 markets. And what's interesting about that too is that a lot of it, if you look at Milan, for example, supply being delivered there, and its vacancy rates, even though it's a young and immature market, or relatively immature relative to the flat markets, it is less, or excuse me, vacancy rates are going to be already in the single digits. So those secondary markets are growing, but vacancy rates are relatively speaking quite low there. But primary markets, the flat markets, still very much account for most of European supply active. And by the end of the year, we expect that figure to be 5.8 gigawatts. It's a very healthy market. Providers are actively, the list of providers in the markets is typically growing, trying to bring on new supply, and that's to satisfy the the appetite of organizations like hyperscalers, but also enterprises as well too. The cost to do so, though, for data center providers, I needn't tell anybody in the room that represents a data center provider, like the gentleman who will be on the panel discussion after this presentation, are soaring, to say the least. And their typical build costs can be, in my discussions with operators, for any particular project, cost overruns are well into the double digits sometimes. And that is factor number one, feeding into the rental rate increases that I've highlighted here. So if I picked out three markets, if you look at multi-megawatts terms of a deal, a contract that a data center provider might sign with a hyperscaler, we're seeing that high end of the range on a 5 to 10-year lease term grow, to say the least, and it's growing at double digits, and this is the high end of the range. We see it across those three markets right now for, again, organizations that are taking anywhere, say, 3 to 10 megawatts or 10 to 20 megawatts. So to get that capacity, it's going to cost you a lot more as a buyer. It's as simple as that. And year on year, that's if you can even get the capacity, and that, of course, the price of that capacity is going up significantly. And the build costs, the reasons for the heightened build costs are highlighted at the bottom of the slide as well there too. So, a combination of that supply-demand imbalance and the cost to deliver all that new capacity across Europe that I highlighted, growing significantly. And it's costing, the total cost of these projects is on the rise too, and that's because, as I mentioned before, organizational requirements for capacity are greater and more complex than ever. And if you talk about hyperscalers, and by the way, that class of companies is driving 85 to 90% of the demand in any given quarter, those hyperscaler requirements are significant, to say the least. Large-scale facilities are needed, fitted out in the way they need them fitted out. So deals with hyperscalers are taking longer to complete, and that average deal size is on the rise as well too. And the result are the facilities that you see before you. So we're here in Amsterdam. If you look at the picture on the bottom left, that's EdgeConnex's in there somewhere. It's an M6 facility, so 50 megawatts plus, or 50 megawatts, and there are other facilities across Europe that are being delivered at unprecedented scale. And again, that's a reflection of the needs of their customers. As I said at the start of the discussion, or the start of the presentation, no discussion about data centers or presentation would be complete without the acronym AI. And so those emerging AI requirements are emerging across the continent, but nowhere near the scale of that we see in the United States. And so that sort of technology adoption pattern, or lag, if you will, is very much at play when it comes to AI. So we're not seeing deployments from GPUs at service providers like CoreWeave with hundreds of megawatts, for example. Those kinds of requirements are simply not being delivered here because there isn't the capacity, as I mentioned before. I've highlighted the decline in capacity, but more importantly, there isn't the power. Even if you want to deliver that facility in 3 to 5 years' time as a provider, there's simply securing that power is difficult at best, to say the least. And so what that means in the meantime is that we believe at CBRE that AI is going to be the biggest demand driver of colocation data center capacity that we've ever seen in the history of the industry. And so that view very much remains intact, but it's not here and now. 3 to 5 years down the line, different story. Where it's fulfilled is the question. So customer location strategies, where data centers build, in other words, I think by definition will have to change. More capacity will be required. And it's a different kind of capacity too, where rack densities, the likes of AI companies, whether they're startups, whether they're GPUs as service providers, whether they're enterprises, those with incredible rack density requirements that simply aren't being, the facilities in play right now aren't able to accommodate, and nor are the providers. And so that means a new type of data center design as well too, where latency requirements won't be the same. Data center processing, data processing might be different as well too. I'm over time here, so I'm going to wrap up by saying there'll be new types of customers that providers have to speak to and have to deliver capacity to as well too, and they want their capacity quick, green, and cheap. They want to be able to scale up quite quickly, and they want that capacity quite cheaply. That's whether they'll get that or not is another story. That seems like nirvana, but I think it stands to reason that data center design and the locations that data centers are built are going to have to change over the course of time. But we do expect long-term for there to be a lot more AI demand. It's just not the here and now. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and happy to talk to you throughout the conference about the state of the European data center markets. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll start with the first panel. And I would like to ask on stage Dick Teunissen, Managing Director EMEA at Edge Connex. And he has over 20 years experience in telecommunication, data centers, and hosting and cloud service. Thank you very much for being here. Second panelist is Eugene Bergen-Henegouwen. He joined Equinix in 2013. In 2019, he became responsible for the EMEA region as president, and in this role, he oversees the management and strategy of EMEA. Thank you for being here. And last but not least, Olivier Micheli. He's the president and CEO of Data4 Group since 2014. Welcome, Olivier. He's also president of French Data Center, a trade association that brings together the entire data center ecosystem in France. Thank you for coming to Amsterdam. I wanted... Yeah, here you are. We're going to talk about something...
At least I look 20 years younger.
Oh, yeah, it's true. How old is this photo?
I have no idea.
Okay, maybe you should use
at least 10 years.
Use some AI to
something like that
to get younger. Listen, we're going to talk actually not about this, but about how you look, but about the negative perceptions and the sector and the reputation. Although maybe you never know. But before we start, Eugene, you told me just before we came up stage something really interesting, that you worked for Philips and you had a call of Paul Allen, one of the founders of Microsoft, right? And you had a talk to him. He wanted to lure you into the company. And he had one question in the beginning. What was it? What did he ask you?
Yeah, it's a story. Oh, sorry.
Yes, use the microphone.
Yeah. It's a story I tell to young people. You can achieve anything in life. Anything. And this story is sort of the proof of it, because at some point I was with Philips and I really was looking at Silicon Valley as the heaven for people like me. And I decided to call Headhunter I wanted to become CEO of a startup. So long story short, because we only have 10 minutes, 20 minutes, I ended up indeed at the table with Paul Allen. And Paul Allen had one question that, since I ask everyone that interviews with me, I tell them it's Paul Allen's question. And the question is, Eugene, what's the biggest fuck up in your career? And what did you learn from it? And if you don't have any, you didn't do anything useful in the first place. 20 minutes later, he said, you got the job, because I had a lot to choose from.
Okay, I thought that was a really interesting anecdote to start about the subject which is at hand now. What is the biggest fuck-up in your minds that your industry could make the next coming 5 to 10 years for data center? Have you thought about that?
I don't know what the biggest fuck-up in the next 10 years will be. I for sure know what the last fuck-up has been over the past 5 or 10 years.
Okay, enlighten us.
And that's been the public perception.
Right.
I think back to what when we shook hands earlier, the first thing you said about data centers is that they are big buildings that consume a lot of energy and they look ugly.
Gas guzzlers, terrible to look at in a small country like the Netherlands. And all these windmills we have that people are complaining about, and where does the energy go? To you.
Absolutely. So
that's the idea.
That's been the biggest fuck up that we've had, in my opinion. And if I look at building data centers when I started 20 years ago, it was pretty easy. You'd go find a piece of land, file a power application, throw in a permit, right? And 12 months later, you'd be up and running. And
not anymore.
Not anymore. I mean, today, half of my job is to talk to politicians and influence opinions.
Yes. You are both from the Netherlands. Olivier, you are in France, way bigger. Do you have the same discussion or non-existent?
No, of course we have the same discussion. And to come back to your point, I think where we could struggle is not to hear the little signals we are receiving from the different stakeholders. And especially you were talking on the perception. I think it's very important to work on the perception of the market. Otherwise, people, other external stakeholders, will regulate heavily our industry. So that's why it's very important, all of us, all the industry, basically, to explain what is a data center, what is the role of the data center, and how it is essential for the economy.
But this is really interesting. Eugene, we were talking about that as well. Everybody in this country is very critical about Schiphol, the airport that some of you used maybe the last couple of days. And environmentally wise, people are complaining. Noise, people are complaining about that. While complaining, the next day they will buy a ticket to go to Madrid or London. So perception is very negative, but we use it. Is that the same thing happening with data center?
Absolutely. People that come to me and say, oh, you're in this data center industry, it's really bad. I tell them, okay, we can make a deal. You never go online shopping, you never play a game, you never use a credit card, you never do a bank transaction, and when you go to hospital, we'll do a diagnosis just on the few foils that are on the table. People wonder, where is the internet? They think it's in the air. The internet is in data centers.
Okay, so I mean, this is knowledge that you guys have, and women, everybody here in the hall, but perception, as you know, is reality. How are you going to change this perception or this reality? Because again, you need a lot of energy, and the buildings you build are ugly.
Largely the perception is...
Am I right or not?
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
do you like those buildings?
I love them.
You love them, yeah.
To death.
Money-wise?
Not just money-wise. A lot of the perception can be...
Why are they even visible? That's what I wonder.
It
Why are
depends
you
on the
not
country.
underground? Why are you not in a bunker?
In some countries I am.
But come to my campus, you will see beautiful assets with marble, etc.
Yeah, you
They're
look.
not,
Yeah.
They are not
But
ugly.
listen, you're French, so naturally you put some effort in
A
it.
little bit Italian, a little bit Spanish as well.
Do we have a picture?
Come to. I didn't see my campus, by the way.
Are you kidding? I mean, is it true that your data center looks fancy, so to say?
We have beautiful campus. We have dares. We have wild boards. We have a beautiful ecosystem in our campus. So come and see our campus.
So you could learn something from him.
There is a lot of legislation. There is a lot of legislation around the outside of a data center. Believe it or not.
They have to be ugly.
They have to be beautiful and green.
But they're not. So I mean, I don't want to tease you, but again, I mean, isn't there any fun way to make it interesting? Hire some artist, paint something on it.
And we do. I mean,
Never seen it.
Open your eyes. there is
Point
clearly. You have to look at this. You have to look at this over time.
Yeah.
I agree with you that probably most of the data centers that have been built. At least 10 years ago, they look very ugly and do not fit into the landscape. But if you look at the ones that are currently being built, it's a lot better.
But the irony, Eugene, is really interesting because you are in the business of connectivity. You connect subjects. So how is it possible that you people cannot connect in the minds of the users, the consumers, the fact that without you, they wouldn't have their iPhones, their tablets, their screens with anything on it?
Well, Twan, I would actually go much further than that. Enterprises don't get it. And the exploding power cost that we've seen, in that sense, was a blessing in disguise. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that early on, but at some point I realized there is still about somewhat south of 50% of the IT infrastructure sits on-premise in buildings of enterprises. If you look at the power usage efficiency of data centers, because that's how we make money, right? By wasting as little energy as possible, there is a KPI called PUE, the power usage efficiency. If it's 1, you don't waste any energy. If it's 2, you waste 100%, 50%, of course. When we started looking at enterprises, because we had to pass on the power cost, which was like a factor 2, enterprises' PUEs are actually 2, 3, and 4, because they don't look at efficiency. That means we had customers moving from what we call on-premise to data centers in Equinix, cutting power cost, power usage by 80% and more. So to your point, what do we have to do to change our brand? We first have to do the right thing, and we'll talk about that in a minute when we talk environmental, and then we have to talk way more about it. But if enterprises don't get that, we still have to do the explanation. I was on a call with a big Japanese company last week where I explained you can cut your power cost and your power usage by this kind of levels. They said we will get rid of all our own data centers. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Are you saying at the moment you are on the wrong track because you are using too much power, which is not necessary if you build in the right techniques?
No, I'm saying that data centers in enterprises themselves waste way more energy than.
Yes, I was trying to say the same, but so that's something that you can solve, sort of.
Yeah, and
why is it not happening?
Well, it is happening. Even large consultancy firms are using this as move on-prem to off-prem. And by the way, the taxonomy of Brussels is going to make a big impact here. Yeah. We are big supporters of that because basically it means when you want to get a good ranking on your environmental, you have to reduce your power consumption dramatically.
Same in France, Olivier?
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, I totally agree with what Eugène said. Is basically it has a positive ecological impact when you move to on-prem to off-prem in data centers like ours, which are built at the state of the art. It's basically, you know, it's like us citizens. You know, you have a better ecological impact if we are living in large, you know, an efficient building instead of having all of us our houses. And it's the same, the collocation in the data center is the same. Yeah. So it's much more efficient because we are implementing, you know, again, state-of-the-art data centers from a design, construction, and operational perspective.
Is there a difference? Because in France, we know that 2 years ago this month, when the war started of Russia against Ukraine, in the Netherlands, many other European countries, there was a huge price increase energy-wise. In France, not so much because you had nuclear facilities. Is the debate still going on also in France about let's go to green power, let's say goodbye to these old nuclear plants that we have?
What is green power? You know, you had a big debate at the European Commission where the French push hard to have the nuclear as a clean, let's say, power. But just to come back to your point...
Do you consider it, just to establish that, for you, nuclear power is clean energy?
It's low carbon energy, yeah, definitely. But of course, there is a risk. You need to be very careful and how to manage the waste. Right. But for sure, it's zero carbon emissions, the nuclear. So, and in France, it's true we have 70% of our electricity which is based on nuclear. However, 2 years ago, you're right, when we had the Ukraine war starting, basically, actually the price in France as well rise, because you have a lot of maintenance of nuclear, you know, trenches. And so actually, France has not enough power, basically, and has to import, and the price rises as well, like in all the other European countries.
Yeah.
I think in English the term is greenwashing.
Exactly, that's happening a lot. So that could be another terrible thing for your industry, because you will, as we have heard before, use a lot in the future, way more than we even can think of. I mean, you must be thinking of that. The power grid in the Netherlands is
more than full, yes.
Well, fucked up, some people would say. There are houses being built and offices that cannot go on the grid because there is no capacity. Is that a terrible headache for your industry?
It is a headache for not just our industry, it's a headache for everyone that is in business or wants to live in this country. Interestingly, there was some about this in the press over the last few days, where basically the way the electricity law works in this country, the electricity companies are not able to differentiate between the applications they get. And so the result is a lot of phantom or ghost applications, right, that sit in a queue that consume, right, potentially a lot of energy. But in reality, they don't, because there is no substantial business plan or opportunity behind it. And so at least a fair portion, and in my mind, probably more than half, right, of the problem would go away if a lot of these phantom applications would disappear.
Yeah. Still, how do you look upon, I mean, AI will be a term that we use a lot. When this is consumer-friendly in the way that a lot of people, instead of Googling, are prompting, What does that mean to your data center and the energy that you use?
Well, it's, the cloud-based application, AI, consume a lot, basically. So we need, and the price rise as well. Even now, if it's going down a little bit, it's still higher than before. So it forces us, basically, to be much more efficient in the way, basically, we are, operating our own data centers. This is critical. And so therefore, basically, we need to put in place mechanisms if you want to consume less power in our data centers.
Like what? What are you putting in place? How can you solve this problem?
So we are already working more than a decade on different principles, like free cooling, for example. You can use the outside air to cool your machines. You need as well to use brand new servers where you can increase the temperature in the rooms up to 32 degrees, for example. You have hot aisle containment. And as well for AI, it's very important as well to work on liquid cooling, direct liquid cooling, to bring the water. I know it's not evident because electricity and water doesn't work very well together, but to bring water into the room as near as possible from the chipsets to cool the machines, the servers, that are very, very dense. So it needs to be put in place, basically. It's more cost, more capital, for sure, and it's more complex, but it is trivial.
Is it sustainable? Is it sustainable with the demand that you are talking about?
So I think it's really a matter of taking the right measures. If I look at Equinix, we are investing hundreds of millions in what we call PPAs, that's Power Purchase Agreement. We work together with very specific projects all over the region to basically build truly green energy that we consume in our data centers. This year, Equinix is going to hit 1,000 megawatts in PPAs. And that is 100% green, built for our own use.
Is there any industry in the world that is expanding as fast as yours?
Probably not. At least we're one of the most fastly expanding industries around.
Yeah.
I would say NVIDIA.
Yes. Well, they've become an industry
well,
by
but
themselves.
that's connected to you.
And I say that for a reason. NVIDIA is, we are one of the major partners of NVIDIA. And I'm not working for NVIDIA, just so you guys know.
Are you an investor in NVIDIA?
Privately, yes, and well before the hike.
So we're talking to a very happy man today.
Very happy man, yes. But I want to share a story that I think might be of interest to everyone. I was at a dinner of The Economist in October in London. There were 20 large companies, the big names, C-level, and it was facilitated by The Economist, and the topic was AI. And I was blown away. We're talking literally venture capital, banks, large retailers, blown away by the fear of these people. They were fear-struck with AI. They said, this is the end of our industry. We have nothing to differentiate. And at some point I said, guys, and you will correct me on the date, 300 years ago, we invented the steam locomotive. It was going to kill us all. Did it? Then we invented robots. They were going to eliminate all low-level jobs. Did it? And now we have AI. I think we need AI. It's not something nice to have, because what is the beauty of AI? Unstructured data. In the past, we had to put everything in Excel spreadsheets and Word documents and hierarchies. With AI, you throw it all in a bucket, you do a search, and it extracts the information. So you were able to innovate at a substantially higher level than ever before. And looking at the challenges that we as an industry face, we will need AI to overcome our problems.
Olivier?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, AI goes faster than human, but human and AI is better than AI alone. So I think we should not be afraid by AI. AI is supporting us. We are using, for example, at Data4, we're using already AI in our systems on energy efficiency. And it's going to impact 83% of the largest firms in the US already use generative AIs for their business. So, and why they're doing it, not just to be, to increase the price of their shares, it's because it's adding value to their business.
Right. So you're saying it's helpful, it helps the industry. Same question to you. Are you afraid for AI or not at all?
No, I'm not afraid of AI. And for those of you that have been around a while, I see great similarities to the internet bubble in the early 2000s. There was
But it burst, as you know.
I was there, so there was no commercial use, right, for the internet at
Is
that point in
do
time.
you expect something to happen in your industry as well? It's on every engine is working now. It's full throttle, hitting for a wall.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, today there still is no real commercial use for AI, but there is a lot of demand for it. People are investing enormous amounts of money on the bubble, which looks very similar to what happened early 2000. Yeah. So I think for sure, right, there is going to be a fallout in the coming years of those, right, who do find a business model and those who don't.
We have 1 minute left for this panel. You were talking about the cities where your industry is big: Frankfurt, London, Paris, Amsterdam, Dublin. If you could start all over again today, which city would you choose for your ideal data center?
I started in Amsterdam. I would do it again.
Eugene?
London, as also
use your microphone.
London, as also Kevin said, is by far the biggest market, so I would start in London.
Olivier?
We're in Paris, but as well, we're in Spain, we're in Italy, we're in Warsaw, we're in Germany, we're in Luxembourg, and soon we'll announce the 7th market. So, I mean, it's good. The flap D market is good, but the rest is marvelous.
Right, but personally, you stay in Paris, right? Better food, better everything.
Sorry, say it again?
I said, you would like to stay in Paris?
Yeah, I'm a European guy. Paris, Milan, wherever. Amsterdam. I'm very happy to be in Amsterdam here, actually.
Very good. Thank you so much, the three of you, for enlightening us. Thank you. Okay, for the next panel, we are fast-paced today. We have very interesting speakers. Here they are. Waldemar Maurer, he is a partner at DTCP Infra with over 15 years of experience in private equity and investment banking. Second one, welcome Waldemar, please take a seat. Lucas Roeland is Director Organization Digital Infrastructure at NIBC Bank with over 25 years of experience. Welcome, Lucas. Take a seat, please. Erik van den Berg is Director EMEA at IPI Partners and over 9 years of experience in the industry. Welcome. And last but not least, Xenia Sari, Managing Director of Digital Bridge. She oversees DBRG's capital markets activities across the EMEA region. Welcome, Xenia. Xenia, take a seat, and I would like to start with you. From the two panels we have seen here now, you're the only woman on stage. It happens a lot. Is it still in this industry more difficult for women? Do you meet a lot of women? Are they just not here, but they are there? What is happening?
Yeah, look, I mean, if you look around, it's obvious, right, that there's an imbalance. Look, the reason I joined Digital Bridge is that was one of the main reasons. It's a very diverse workplace. In fact, the London office is over 60% women, which is quite unusual in our industry. But I've been doing this for over 20 years, and everywhere else I've worked at, it's been mostly men.
Very good. People have understood, I think, from the announcement that we are going to talk about finance right now. Because as we have heard, this is an industry that is booming business. And what I would like to ask you guys is, with the popularity, forecasted growth of AI, will this change the way investors look at data center investments? Who would like to take that question? Yeah? Xenia?
I'm happy to go first. So, look, we own 180 data centers globally. And last year, we've seen just explosive growth across the board. And that's mainly driven by AI. We spent about $7.5 billion just in greenfield developments last year alone. And then this year, that's increasing to about $13 billion. So clearly, AI is, it requires a lot of new capacity and sort of specialized infrastructure, and we think it's going to be a 10-year life cycle. Similar to the cloud, we started building for the cloud about 11 years ago. That cost about $3.6 trillion to build that infrastructure. We think AI similarly will be a 10-year life cycle, and it's going to cost, depending on which estimates you look at, anywhere from $5 to $6 trillion. And the other
You throw these numbers out as if it is nothing, but it is gigantic, right? And if you're talking about a 10-year life cycle, where did this 10 years start? Did it start a year ago?
I think we just started. I think we're just at the very, very beginning.
Is this ground zero today, basically?
I think we're just a few months in.
Really?
Yeah. And I think, look, somebody, I think Kevin said before that we're not seeing a lot of that yet. I think that's true. I think most of it has been in the US rather than Europe, but I think that's going to change. And there's some considerations, because you asked about the markets, there's some considerations specific to AI workloads, that create a more diverse geographic expansion for data centers. So obviously, power constraints, we've already talked about that a few times. So I think any market that provides either a colder climate or access to renewable energy or just generally more capacity for energy will be attractive, which is why we're starting to see a lot of growth in these tier 2, tier 3 markets. And also being closer to the end user because a lot of the processing is done in real time is important, which is why you're seeing all these edge data centers.
Yeah, Waldemar, where would you go to if you could choose now for your money? Where would you invest?
It depends what you are targeting and depends on the use case of the client, right? If you are targeting, I would say, AI workloads and the serve AI, you would rather go into countries where you have cheap power. So you would try and position it in the Nordics, especially if you are targeting AI model training, right?
So the countries are Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark. That's where you would go.
Yes,
to?
because it's
not densely populated, or doesn't that make any difference to you?
No, as I said, it depends on the use case. For pure AI model training, you don't need latency. It's all about basically costs. So you are trying to position it in countries where you have cold climate and where you have cheap power.
Okay, Lucas, same.
Yeah, I think we see the same happening, and we see investors primarily going to the Nordics for AI kind of developments. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, so we are actually invested in Nordics, so actually very bullish indeed about the Nordics. I think we should appreciate that there are still a lot of things that we don't know about AI, right? And especially how AI will be monetized. Twan, to your point, I'm not sure that ultimately our customers will be completely indifferent to the fact that there's not a lot of end users in the Nordics. It's also not extremely easy always to build in the Nordics. So there are definitely constraints, but yes, I mean, our customers are building huge facilities in the Nordics. Google has announced more than 200 megawatts in Norway. They're building hundreds of megawatts in Finland. So absolutely the Nordics is a very attractive market to be.
Is it for angel investors in general, a risky market, this one? Are people lined up to put their money in what you are doing, or are they hesitant?
Well, I think there's definitely barriers to entry to become a provider to the larger customers. They don't just trust anyone to build their facilities for them. So you definitely need to earn their trust. You definitely need to deliver on time and on budget for them. So starting a new platform right now today, I would say that there's definitely challenges to that.
Yeah. So people are risk averse.
I mean, in general, it depends. So in terms of AI, it always depends on investor appetite, right? And I would say for typical infrastructure investors, it's probably some sort of a change, because typical infrastructure investors would like to invest in long-term contracts, secured cash flows, so that they have very, very long visibility. And I would say that there are more and more investors probably out there and also rising who are betting specifically on AI and who are betting more on vertically integrated models, so that you are not only serving the data center, but that you are serving the GPU chips as well.
Yeah. Xenia, the topic we just talked about, the perception of the market and the data center, how does that tie in to investors that are risk averse? They don't want to invest in something that could be a big hassle or a political problem.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's no question that is the number one issue that we're dealing with, both in terms of growth constraints as well as reputation. The reality is, and I think it was said very well at the last panel, in that the internet would still exist. It's just a lot of it would be in-house. So by consolidating all of this into data centers, you're actually creating efficiencies. So, and I think that message is not just well understood.
Is it being communicated enough right now? That this is a market that could help
clearly
you?
Not.
Well,
Clearly
this is you're preaching to your own members of the same church, but outside this building.
No, clearly it's not, right? Because you can hear what the perception of in the public is about data centers, and I don't think people appreciate that. Most companies. When I first started working in banking, I was working for ING in New York, and we had our data center on the 40th floor. And guess what? When we outsourced it, guess how much it cost and what kind of efficiencies you have when you're hosting a data center in a high-rise. And by outsourcing it, we kind of cut down our cost by 60–70%, and that's a lot of that is the power that you're utilizing.
Yeah.
I think also from a banking perspective, of course, ESG is always top of the list in a number of topics that we discuss with our clients. So energy efficiency clearly is a big topic and needs to improve, and all the data center providers are working on that. But it's also reusing the heat of data centers for heating networks. So there are different ways to also become more efficient, let's say, using your REST product as a source of energy for others. So in that sense, I think, yes, the industry has to work on it, but they're also taking action now. And for example, in Germany, you see actually regulation now demanding the reuse of heat from data centers.
Where is it easiest or toughest to set up your business? If you're talking about regulation, it seems to me that Europe is in the front line here, and in the US it's maybe more lax. Is that true?
Yeah, I think so. It's a more hot topic here in Europe. I think particularly in Germany, where you have this new regulation in place now, I think it's the first country where we see this. And we run the risk, or let's say we could expect maybe other countries where this is going to happen as well.
Yeah.
And it sort of forces the industry to become more efficient. In a way, I think it's good to have this pressure on, of course, but at the same time, it's also a challenge.
Yeah, true. Waldemar, do you see that happening in Germany?
Yes.
Rules are very strict.
I think Germany, as Lukas said, is the first country which has introduced the so-called Energy Efficiency Act. And it's actually, you cannot control everything what the politicians try to regulate. Yeah, so you're a little bit on the air on some of the KPIs and trying to get there. So it's getting tougher indeed, but it's also getting tougher, I would say, to the benefit of the community at the end, because it's really, really necessary that data centers become as efficient as possible, and this is what this regulation forcing you to do.
Is there a debate in Germany about this?
There is a huge debate about it, right? Because on the one hand, it's getting stricter and stricter and getting more and more difficult to set up to construct new data centers. On the other hand, the demand for data centers, and because the data is growing every single year, something like by 30%, is growing exponentially. So there is a dilemma, right?
And the dilemma maybe in Germany, specifically talking about your country, is that the economy is going down. Well, it's true, right? The numbers point that out. And I was talking for a television show that I'm anchoring with Ola Kalenius, the CEO of Mercedes-Benz, and I said, your industry, your cars, will be surpassed in sales by China soon. And he was laughing at that half a year ago. It's happening right now. There are less regulations, to put it mildly, in China, also for your business. Would you say that the regulations for your business in Europe are hindering the economy right now?
It's a tough question. I think...
I have the idea that you wanted to say yes.
I think, I think that what is happening at the end is right, that the regulation is right, because it forces people really to overthink their business model and to think about efficient use of power. Yeah, is it hindering in terms of like growth and how quickly you can supply the necessary infrastructure for growth of the economy? Likely yes.
Yeah, Xenia?
Look, I mean, our biggest constraint is power availability, and whether that's driven by regulation or the aging grid is relevant, right? We should all be thinking about using renewable sources. We invested in a business last year called Switch in the US. That's a data center business where 100% of the data centers are powered by renewable. And at Digital Bridge, we made a pledge a couple of years ago to get to 100% renewable energy across our entire portfolio. We're halfway there. So I think, when you're building the sites, it's important to build those adjacent to renewable sources. So it's certainly something that we should all be thinking about. It's not just the regulation. It's the fact that the grid is aging, right? The grid was built, 100 years ago here? It wasn't built for the cloud. It wasn't built for AI. So clearly cannot accommodate this explosive demand that's going to continue for many years to come.
Are you saying whatever is happening, the demand is exploding? Investors will be lined up to invest in this because there is no other solution. The demand of the consumer is they're going to use more data, they're going to use more screens, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there is increasing digitization just across the wider economy. There's more usage of data, there's new technology. So that trend is not going anywhere. It will only continue. If you see the consumption of data over the years, it's only going one direction.
Lucas?
Yeah, and I think we also need the data industry for the energy transition, not to forget. Because data centers play also quite an important role in the energy transition. We need to get smarter in the use of energy in our homes, everywhere. So in that sense, it goes hand in hand.
Erik?
Yeah, I mean, it's look, it is the first time that the society has needed to make, at least in my memory, has needed to make an active decision on how to allocate power and to which industries to allocate power. So indeed, we have a perception problem. I think there's a good story to tell for data centers. But indeed, absolutely, I think there will be more regulation and there will be more barriers to entry in terms of where and how you can build data centers.
Yeah. Xenia, maybe for you a technical question, but in any case, in 2018, the financing deals were a data center's value back to loan. It was completed in the US, and since then, there have been more similar deals. In these deals, the money made from renting out the data center pays off the loan. What do you think about doing more of these types of financing for data centers in Europe in the future?
Yeah, look, the ABS market is way more developed in the US, right? So we entered the market as Digital Bridge in 2016. And fast forward to today, about 25% of the issuances in the whole market were done by Digital Bridge. So it's a market where we lead the way. And the first data center deal that you mentioned in 2018 was our company Vantage. Now, we haven't seen those in Europe yet. I think the first one is coming very soon. And the reason why we haven't seen that, there's a couple of reasons. But first of all is Europe is made up of a number of different jurisdictions and different legal frameworks. And even if you look outside of digital infra in other sectors, you don't really see multi-jurisdictional cross-border ABS facilities. So that creates a hurdle. The second thing is that you don't quite have the scale within a certain jurisdiction for an ABS, because the ABS market, at least the public ABS, not the private ABS, to be liquid needs to be of a certain size. And then the third reason is that there's different treatment in capital for these ABS investors, especially insurance companies between the US and Europe. So there's a few hurdles and why that hasn't been available to the European market. And I don't think we're ever going to catch up with the US, but we're going to start seeing a few of those.
Yeah, are you saying Europe cannot catch up with the US?
I don't think so. Again, just given the fact that you have different legal frameworks, given the scale of these issuers, and given some of the other things I mentioned, I don't think we're ever going to get to the same level.
Nothing changes, basically. That's what you're saying, Lucas. Well, they called us in Washington the museum, right, Europe. But I don't know if that's still the case.
I think, yeah, of course, US is far more ahead of this, and ABS in itself is an interesting product, basically to recycle the bank debt in the data centers that are operational. So in that sense, I think it's a good tool. But I mean, ABS is not the only way to do that. You could also do a simple bond issue, or you could do a private placement. So it's not necessarily it needs to be in ABS. But the capital markets themselves, I think, are a good tool to do this. The thing is, in Europe, has a much deeper banking market than the US. So I think there's still a lot of bank capital available to support the development of DC projects. So what we see here in Europe is actually a development from single-site development facilities to multi-site development facilities. So in a portfolio where operational and development projects are taken together, and developers are arranging large facilities in the market just to finance a complete development pipeline. I think Waldemar has experience with that. He just raised quite a substantial amount in the market just to develop a pipeline of data center projects.
How much,
and then you can
Waldemar,
just postpone
how much did you invest?
$1 billion.
$1 billion. Yeah. That's no Mickey Mouse money.
Lucas was very supportive of this.
Oh yeah, it was a joint effort. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The numbers are staggering, right? The investments that are being made. $1 billion. Does it take a long time to make that decision?
To make the decision whether we would like to raise the money, or
yes.
In terms of, I think we are doing everything what needs to be done to grow our businesses at the end.
Sure, but everybody does that, but they don't have $1 billion to invest.
Yeah, for sure, but right, in the market, I mean, banks are willing to support companies which are growing and where they have security.
Yeah.
Right. So if you are building up a business and you have the right contracts in place, so you are giving the right securities to all of your stakeholders, then people are usually willing to finance it. And I think this is also what makes the difference in the market today. There are platforms which are not able to raise capital, and there are platforms which are, able to raise capital.
You paint a sunny future for this business.
Yes.
Yes, well, on that note, maybe that's the best ending of a panel that you could wish for. Thank you so much, the four of you, for sitting here today and talking to us. Thank you. Okay, for the last panel session this morning, thank you so much, all of you. There are 3 speakers that I will talk to individually here at the tables. The first one is, the people I would introduce to you is Sanjay Sainani. He's Global Senior Vice President and CTO Data Center Business at Huawei Digital Power. You are the last person to talk to, so please take place there. Jim Simonelli is Senior Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at the Secure Power Division of Schneider Electric. And Jörg Dessler is President of Stultz Air Technology Systems in the US. Please come to the stage. Jim, you're the first one I'm going to talk to. Thank you so much for being here. You came in from Boston today, right?
I did.
Yes. Does it work?
I don't know.
Yes, now it does.
Yeah,
yes.
I did. Even better now.
And before we went on stage, you talked to Sanjay. You are old friends, I think. You know each other a very long time.
It's a small industry. We all sort of know each other. So on personal levels and professional levels, all kind of working in the best interest of.
Are you competitors?
We are competitors in the market, but I think one of the things that we find is that the market. You hear a lot of the co-location facilities. They actually require us to be more standardized between us as well, because one supplier can't do it all. So to some extent, yes, we have to compete, but at the end of the day, there is the need. We're all serving the same market.
The numbers are staggering, the investments that are being made. Have you ever experienced in your career something happening like this?
Not this sustained area. You know, I've been working for quite a long time, and of course, we talked about a bit about the internet boom, a little in the cloud boom, which maybe was overscaled, was overhyped a bit. But now this sustained growth, particularly coming out of COVID, where sort of the world understood how to operate in a digitized manner. And then with the notion of AI, again, AI actually does seem to have some very tangible benefits in terms of operational efficiencies for enterprises. That's where it comes about. We're not developing AI or things just for fun. It actually has to bring economic, societal value, and you can kind of see those dimensions happening. There's a real pull that feels real that over the next 3 to 5 years, I haven't seen something like this before. No.
It's new. So what is the future? What do you think will happen?
So I think we heard a bit about we have this supply-demand challenges. If you kind of look at the world globally, which is how Schneider tends to look at things, is that look, data centers are still just teetering around 2% of the total electricity consumption on the planet. But that's very different upon where you are. So if you're in Amsterdam as we are today, is that it's over 30%. So there's different areas. So what's happening is you see this guided approach where the ability to supply the energy and where the demand is basically working on a market. That's why you heard the talk around Nordics. You see things going on in Southern Europe, parts of the US. The secondary markets are really hot right now to cop up that demand.
Yeah, but how do you cop up with that demand? I mean, if you look at the figures, Google search is estimated to consume 0.3 watt, and then if you prompt, then it would take you 2.9 watt per question.
Yeah, so look, I think that's where this is where it's a little bit dangerous to kind of extrapolate from where we are today to where things are going to be in the future. That's an actual, very factual statement today on how a query a search that uses a query takes up more energy per query. But look, we're just in the early days today. There is so much more efficiency and effectiveness just on the IT side that's coming. Think back if we were sitting in 1999 and talking about the internet and how it would take, how am I going to provide 100 web servers for the space? That would have been 100 kilowatts of 100 servers at that point. We would have been extrapolating out these dramatic ways forward. You think in 2020 or even 2015, that same workload was consumed on 2 servers, maybe 10 kilowatts in that space. That same dramatic efficiencies on the compute side is what I think is a very positive way forward. Not to mention, at least as we heard today, is that our job is to make sure that every watt that's consumed by a data center goes into that IT load. And we're becoming very, very good at doing that. Historically, that's why the colo and self-build enterprise hyperscalers are doing very good. That's another dramatic way forward where I think we can meet these demands.
And do you have the same discussions in the US as we have heard in France, the Netherlands, Germany, about the data center and the environment, energy, the gas guzzlers that they are?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, there's a few things that are going on. This is really global across the goal. Everyone is making net zero pledges. The notion that we can't PPA our way out of this in the future, we do actually start to think about not just siting data centers where there's green energy, but where there's not green energy. I mean, siting a 100 megawatt, 200 megawatt campus can become a valuable asset to allow a local utility to add more renewables by being more of a dynamic buffer. Sanjay will talk a bit about the role of energy storage in this area. That's actually how data centers can actually help be part of the solution to enable more renewables, to decarbonize the grid around them in the future. That conversation is very heavy in the US right now.
So, but are you optimistic about how that conversation will go in the future?
I'm very optimistic about this. Look, I'm a realist. My personality is something that I never kind of get too high or too low, but I do see that time and time again, given these challenges, it might take time to work out. We're probably in for a bumpy 4 years or so, but usually if you look at the ability to become much more efficient in the IT operations, efficient in infrastructure, and enabling more renewables, remember, capacity is needed even for the electrification for electric vehicles as well. All those things are moving towards a dimension that I do believe that we'll be able to kind of meet the demands of the future.
And do you foresee a competition between the energy that is needed for the data center and public households, other industries?
Yeah, I mean that is part of what that is some of the demand. I mean, it's the notion of electrification. If you really want a sustainable planet, you do have to electrify and then use renewables. Everything's going in that direction. The good news is that means the market's going in that direction. Utility builders, transmission, generation, all those areas. I think that is converging towards a future that actually will have not just the right capacity, but also have the right mix of capacity moving forward. Not in the next I think the midterm we get some interesting challenges, but long term I'm very hopeful.
Yeah. Do you have kids?
I do. I have three grown children and 3 granddaughters.
How old are your kids?
They're 36, 34, and 30.
Maybe a bit too old, but I'm asking for this question.
Go to the grandchildren.
No, but are they making the connection between what they do on screens and the business that we are talking about, data center? Do they have the perception of what is necessary to make it all possible?
It's not as direct as I would like it. It really is not. I think that there's an assumption that their digital lives is somehow in the ether somewhere. They don't always get that connection. It's becoming a bit more real because they are a little bit older. They do work one's in education, or 2 are in education, 1 is in healthcare. They do understand that the use of digital does not just happen. And so on their work experiences, I think there is a real understanding that the need to do their jobs better requires the need for more digital, and that's not free, and there's a connection happening on that side.
And you are explaining it to them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we had fantastic conversations.
Okay. Thank you very much for being here today.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay. Up to the next guest. Jörg Dessler of Stulz. First of all, tell us what your company does. We're going to talk about liquid cooling. Where does it tie into what you are doing?
Oh, we do everything that has to do with cooling. We are a provider of cooling solutions, globally positioned, and lately we're paying very much attention to liquid cooling so that we can meet the rising demand of higher densities in data centers, but our entire portfolio goes from a single 1 ton, I speak US measures right now, so a small kW unit, ceiling hung mounted, up to a megawatt of cooling in a custom designed chilled water unit, for example. We're offering chillers, so we are really offering the entire infrastructure that is needed to cool a modern data center. And as I said, right now we are paying very much attention to the increasing loads in data centers and how we can do this even more efficiently by providing a more integrated infrastructure to really capture these rising heat loads.
Yes. So the liquid cooling, is it a viable solution for upgrading legacy data centers?
Oh, absolutely. I'm completely convinced, and I'm talking about liquid cooling since, I would say, it's 2016. And liquid cooling is not new, right? If we go back in history, it was used at the very beginning of large mainframe computers. And now it's coming back because it is the more efficient way of cooling these increasing chip capacities. And roughly you could say it's 1,000 times better than air cooling. And of course, if we take a look at sustainability, if we take a look at legacy data centers, I'm personally convinced that we can reuse existing data center space by deploying liquid cooling in a smart way.
Yeah. Do you need to be in a certain location for that? I mean, amateur question, do you need to be near rivers, lakes, seas?
No, not at all. This has nothing to do with pulling water from a river or a lake. It is bringing the water directly to the chip, for example, one idea of direct liquid chip level cooling. Or we could talk about immersion, where we dip an entire server into a non-conductive liquid.
So the liquid cooling technologies improve the deployment of the data center in means of time to the market?
I think it can, because we need to then go back and look also into modular structures, right? In the beginning of data centers, everything was stick-built. Then people got the idea of bringing some modular structures in form of containers into the market. But at the end of the day, the densities that you could reach in these buildings were not good enough, at least to my opinion. Whereas if you would look now deploying liquid chip-level cooling, for example, or immersion cooling, and build these structures around this type of technology, you can increase the density significantly. And with that, you can say you have completely factory-built data centers that you can relatively fast deploy, because these are structures that you would actually test completely at your factory.
Yeah. Let's talk about sustainability, which is a key topic in your industry.
Sustainability. At the end of the day, a 10 megawatt data center is a 10 megawatt data center. But if I apply liquid chip level cooling, I can increase my rack density from today we see, 10, 12, 15 kW, maybe to values up to 50 or even 80 or maybe even 100 kW per rack. With that, I could say that I can decrease the space needed to actually build a data center, or I can say I can reuse existing buildings. And that falls well into the discussion about sustainability, to my opinion. Besides that, the efficiency gain that we can reach with liquid chip level cooling plays into the sustainability role as well.
Yeah, so but look in the future, 10 years ahead, what will change?
What will change 10 years? Oh my God. That's a loaded question. I think the demand for data centers will increase significantly. I call it an arms race to bring data center space online. If we're taking a look, for example, in the US, it is unbelievable what these hyperscalers have in mind looking 4, 5, 6 years out. What I think is going to happen is that the deployments as they are being planned today may be revisited to bring this whole AI discussion into the mix. And therefore, we need to think about increasing densities, and we need to think about how we could do this in a smarter way, meaning not wasting an entire big data center space to pump a lot of air into it, but reuse it and rethink it to bring liquid chip level cooling into play, which probably is maybe a discussion that will happen also with legacy data centers or data centers as they've been designed today and changed over the course of time, over the next 4 or 5 years in order to increase the densities needed.
Yeah. Well, preparing for this morning session, I stumbled on this quote of somebody who's very much hated right now, President Putin, who said about artificial intelligence that the government that controls AI controls the world. We have this mix now of AI, data center. Is it true that, I mean, if you are in the front line of controlling AI,
I think
it's also dangerous?
It could be dangerous, depending on who controls AI. And if you go back, there was actually a discussion in the US that AI needs to be regulated. But how do you want to regulate AI if you don't know what AI really is? I think we're still at the very beginning of understanding AI. And AI, I heard in the previous panel, it's kind of, you put everything into a bucket and you apply AI and you get out of it what you need very fast. I think AI can be very good if you look into the medical side, for example. There is a lot of research that needs to be done. There is a lot of stuff, a lot of data available around the world. And it takes enormous amount of personnel to really go through this. AI will help. On the other hand, AI is only looking what's available in the internet. And I always say garbage in, garbage out. So we need to find ways to regulate it and to make sure that what we extract from this is correct.
So that means you think it will be a safe way to go?
I think we can't stop it anymore.
It's a reality.
AI is there. AI is a discussion that evolved in its presence over less than 12 months. At the beginning of last year, we were talking about it on a side note, right? And now it's the #1 topic. And so I think is also the topic of liquid cooling. I need to go back to what we do for a living.
Yeah.
The liquid cooling, from my understanding, is directly connected to AI. I would say maybe it's kind of entering a marriage, and it soon will become an old couple where one can't live without the other. So that's how I look at liquid cooling along with AI or ML and the other high data need processing elements that are out there.
Do you see it as somebody told me this term as a deliciously complicated problem?
It is, yes, and it makes people like me happy because we can take a look at new technologies. We can rethink what we're doing, and we can apply ideas that we thought of a while back, but nobody really wanted to have anything to do with it because it was too costly. There was also a mentioning of cost applying liquid chip level cooling. Yes, it is a little bit more complex, but I think also by looking at the densities you can achieve with it, it's all becoming relative. And I do not believe that the cost is that much more than it is for a typical data center as being built today.
Same here, last question. The future looks very rosy, very sunny also for your company.
Absolutely, it does. It's a wonderful industry to be in at the moment. And from what I'm hearing, I think it will be the case for many years to come.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next speaker. Welcome. Let's first have a clip at your company. There is a little clip here as well. Yeah. Here we go, Sanjay. Huawei, or as in Dutch, they say Huawei, but that's completely wrong, right?
Well, I guess, not being originally a Chinese guy, it took me a while to pronounce it correctly.
So, you pronounce it as Huawei?
Well, when I'm with my teams, I pronounce it as Huawei. When I'm home and when I say Huawei, nobody understands, so I say Huawei.
Yeah. Sanjay, you're based now in the Emirates, is that correct?
Yes, I live in Dubai.
But you have been all over the place.
Yes, for many years.
Yeah, and you guys know each other, how?
We've been in the industry for 30 plus years, building mission critical infrastructure. Those days, as one of the previous speakers mentioned, the biggest data center industry was banking, BFSI. So built a lot of data centers in the US for financial institutions.
I was just wondering, because you told me before that you have been in this industry very long, maybe almost at the beginning that you came in? Why did you choose for this industry?
I guess, my project in my engineering school was UPS. I guess that's how kind of got into the business. But then at some point, at that point in time, the space was mission-critical infrastructure. So IT was one of the mission-critical infrastructures, right? You had semiconductor plants, you had a lot of process industries, instrumentation, nuclear power plants. And all of those required a very highly available, reliable power system. Yeah. And so that was the foundation, that was the cornerstone of the business. And then as IT as an application became so big, it kind of overshadowed the demand.
Reflect on what you have heard today. Everybody is painting a very rosy, sunny picture for this industry. Do you have the same take on this?
Well, I think the outlook is very real. It's very positive. But I think we need to look at what business we are in. I mean, like three of us, many of the folks in the room, we are in the business of offering a facility that can host IT and provide power and cooling. How much IT is driven by applications? What applications driven by the application players? Where will this IT be placed will depend upon cost economics. So at the end of the day, if you are in a country where you don't have enough power and don't have enough land, but you still want to be in the data center business, and then you complain about cost of power, cost of land, I think it's almost like growing cherry orchards in Dubai, right? So at the end of the day, there's a demand for infrastructure. There's a demand for massive amount of spaces with massive amount of energy, coupled with the demand for ESG, respecting the ESG requirements, the carbon footprints and so on. So what's the best mix you can get? And so Nordics can offer you that. I always pose a question to many people. What if I invite you to come to the Middle East? Because I do have a global role, but I'm very close to many decisions makers in the Middle East. And if they were to give you free power, zero cost to power, would you come? Well, you might be able to run a data center, but with completely non-compliant with any of your carbon footprint requirements. And so the question is, you need to find that balance, right? You are in that business of offering services. Does your country, does your ecosystem allow you to do that? And as a country, as government, you have to put regulations in place. You can't have one industry run away with 2 gigawatts of power.
Yeah, but you heard the speaker from Germany who has big problems with that. I suppose maybe where you are operating now, it's easier?
Not really. The problems are all real. It's about are you really understanding the depth of the problem? Or is it really a problem? Because if you ask the question differently, it may not be a problem. Okay. For example, I'll give you an example. I'm from Singapore. I mean, I've been a citizen of Singapore now for many years. Singapore has a moratorium on data centers. Right? I had dinner with one of the government members recently, and their outlook was, we don't want to get into the co-location business. It's a very smart decision. We don't have land. It's ridiculously expensive. We have no power. We import power. For green power, we are trying to have solar deployments in Australia and Indonesia. We're going to have undersea cables to bring power in. So is data center a good business for a country like Singapore? No. And so that is how the question needs to be framed. Is this the right business for you? I mean, there's a demand for 10 gigawatts, but you don't have 10 gigawatts. If you have it, it's not green. You don't have the land mass. So, and I believe that is how the question has to be posed.
Could you then, since we are in the Netherlands and in Amsterdam, answer that question to me? Because 50% of the land mass in the Netherlands is being explored or in use for farmers. What is the rest of it is, as you know, it is a very small country. And is the Netherlands an ideal country for data center?
And the whole data center co-location business started very early with the premise of, do you have demographics? Do you have people to serve? Because if you have people to serve, you need data to be processed to offer them. Then the next premise was, do you have interconnectivity? And Netherlands had the best interconnectivity. Yeah. So does Singapore, so does Tokyo, so does London, and so on. And that's how they grew. But now the third and fourth domain is, do you have enough power? And if you have enough power, is it green power? And so if those two questions cannot be answered, you need to go back to the first question. Is this the right business for that country? Because some other country may have a better equation on all these parameters.
Do you dare to give an answer then to my question? Is the Netherlands an ideal country?
I wouldn't dare to answer that question.
I thought so. So back to the AI and the search on cloud computing, driving the demand for more modular data center solutions. Where do you see, okay, you said reframe the question. Where do you see the solution for all these questions that are popping up now? Is there enough energy? Environmentally friendly or not? Perception?
I think the scale of the industry has grown tenfold. We're talking about cabinets from single-digit kilowatt per rack to double-digit. We're talking about buildings from single-digit megawatt to double-digit, campuses to triple-digit megawatts. And the speed at which these have to be deployed is in months. It's no longer 2-3 years. And so one of the easiest way to deploy at scale is standardization. Having said this, building a data center is construction business. It's hardcore foundations, concrete, cement, steel. It's a construction business. That's not easy. Generates a lot of wastage, takes a lot of time, requires tremendous coordination. So one thing that can help us, and this is the learning from the whole IT industry, right? I mean, the oldest standardization component in the IT industry has been the 19-inch rack. I think Westinghouse put it in 1890. In the 1960s, it became a telecom standard. It still is the building block of the whole trillion-dollar IT infrastructure, right? The first prefabricated house was built by a colonial fisherman who actually built it in the UK, took it across the Atlantic, reassembled in the US. So some of these technologies are very old. Question is, can we apply them? The minute you start talking modularization, the premise is standardization. The minute you standardize, you can modularize, you now have the ability to deploy on demand. That then, if it is done in the factory, you get factory level of automation, precision, quality, and much less wastage. And when you bring all of that to the table, at site, you're not doing any more construction. You're almost doing an assembly job on site. So the finish in terms of time, consistency is much better. So there are advantages that modularity brings to the table, but obviously it's very scenario specific. One, it may work in one particular case in a particular country. It may not work in some other markets for obvious reasons.
Yes. You're a man of the world. You have traveled and lived in many countries. You're working for a Chinese company. We haven't talked about that. Is it easier in China with the regulations to build huge data center to be in this business?
So I'm not so much privy as to how the regulation framework works, but clearly one of the ways to address this problem that we have, or the opportunity that we have, is when you're looking at a few hundred megawatts of energy, even if you have energy available at the generation point, be it windmills or be it solar plants, the grids today don't have the capability to transport that energy to the right locations. And so that is a major challenge. One of the ways to do it is to create zones in countries or in regions where you have data center zones where a lot of power can be optimized, the delivery of power can be optimized to be there. You then can create an ecosystem around it because, like my colleagues mentioned earlier, my peers mentioned, the data center today is part of the circular economy. 100 megawatt of data center is 100 megawatt of heat. If you could even take half of that and supply it somewhere else, you basically are getting into circular economy sustainability principles. And what this would allow you is a zone would allow you to create an ecosystem around that. There may be heat users who would want to be close to that zone because then the heat is easily sellable. And so what I see when I go to China, and I can tell you I have seen campuses in excess of 700, 800 megawatts running on 100% renewable energy. And these are set across large zones where an ecosystem has been developed to be able to facilitate this kind of deployment.
And that's the way to go? That is the future way to go?
Obviously, you wouldn't be able to do it in Amsterdam or in Singapore. But again, like I said, every geography, based on their resources and ecosystem available, will have a value proposition. Also, don't forget, these big data centers are still at the back end, right? They are all about training the models and all of that. But the real application of this will be in the inferencing, right? Right now, we bring data to the work. The future is we'll bring work to the data. The actual processing will be right in front. And that will not be 100, 200 megawatt in a single place. There probably will be 2, 3 megawatts in so many locations. And so clearly, there are different business models that will be out there.
But you are talking like science fiction, Jules Verne. You are saying data center will be the magnet for people to move to and go and work there instead of the other way around?
No, what I meant the other way around. I meant the IT context in the sense that the workload of IT today, you push data to the work as in processing.
Right.
And this is what you do today. Tomorrow, the processing will be at where you work, which means the edge. The data, the processing will happen very close to the customer. And that won't be a 400, 500 megawatt facility.
Last question to you as well. What do you foresee? Let's not make it 10 years from now. This goes so fast right now, the next couple of years.
Let me answer this in a different way. After spending about 20 plus years in the industry, 2007 odd, 8 odd.
You don't make predictions.
I was wondering, am I in the right job? Because this was the slowest moving industry. I mean, you talk of tech performance, any performance. But if you see what's happening in the last 7, 8 years, I mean, it's gone bonkers, literally. So it's a great place to be in. It's a fantastic, innovations are happening around us. And I think I don't think anyone will be able to predict. I think the right thing to do is don't go with predictions.
Sanjay, thank you so much for
Awesome.
being here today.
Thank you.
All of you, thank you so much. This is almost the end of this morning's session. I would like to give the word to the organizer, Stijn, who is somewhere here, I hope. Yeah, there you are, Stijn.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it was a very exciting morning program. I hope you all enjoyed it. The insights were really interesting. I really liked the panel discussions. They kept on going. It was sharp. It was sort of like sparkling, and the final insight also very insightful. So thank you also very much for being here. We have an afternoon program which can be found in the app. So lots of sessions this afternoon in the different tracks, also in this track. I'd like to thank you, Twan, for moderating this morning.
Thank you.
And thanks for all the panelists, and give them a warm and heartfelt applause.
Thank you so much. That's great.
Lunch will be served. Thank you, Jim.